Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 168 of the Chronological Read Through the Bible. I'm on the road today, so I'm going to make this one a little shorter than normal. I want to really look at 2 Kings chapter 9. Now, in this passage, it is a bloody passage. It is a massacre. This is one of those parts of the Bible that is rarely taught in any Sunday school class, even adult Sunday school class, probably never talked about in a children's class. But it is a fulfillment of prophecy that we're about to see that takes place. First off, it really is this point of the Lord's had enough of Ahab and his family being in a position of authority. And this is the end of Ahab's line. It will not only stop with Ahab's immediate family in Israel, but it's also the family extending to Judah, because the king there will be removed as well and struck down because he is a relative by marriage to Ahab. And this isn't just dealing with Ahab. Ahab's, of course, already dead by this point, but this is following his son's death. So this is kind of connecting that line and the wiping out of their line. So a new person's been raised up on the scene. He was a leader in the army under Ahab, and now this Jehu is anointed and set aside to be the new king. Now, Elisha doesn't go and do this himself. He sends one of his servants or one of his understudies, if you will, to do this. And so he sends him to go and anoint this new king, and he tells him, leave. Basically, run as fast as you can out of there once you have fulfilled your obligation in service. So go and head for the hills. So now, once he is in this position of authority, he goes on a wholesale slaughter, basically, to remove any remains of what would be left of Ahab's family's kingdom. Now, I wanted to kind of fast forward here to the end of the Queen Mother's life. So Jezebel, and Jezebel's this name that today it is really kind of come to be known as the spirit of Jezebel. We see this spoken of later in the New Testament in the book of Revelation, where it's spoken of the spirit of Jezebel having entered into one of the churches. And it is this domineering mindset, this mindset that leads people away from true worship of God and has this really false sense of worship and a corrupted version. And that was what we had with Jezebel bringing in not only Baal worship, but the worship of Ashtoreth as well. So you remember there were the prophets of Baal, but there was also an equal number of the prophets of Ashtoreth, which Jezebel had. So Jehu is on his way now to the city to deal with the Queen Mother. Now, if you remember, under the prophet Elijah, I actually even talked about this when I spoke of his prophecy of the death of Ahab, and that Ahab his blood would be licked up by the dogs, and that Jezebel would be eaten by the dogs. But she hasn't been eaten by the dogs up to this point. And so as Jehu is quickly approaching the city, his chariot can be seen at a distance, and the people begin to think that he drives like Jehu, because Jehu's horrible chariot driving, or his charioteer skills, were maybe known far and wide. But it's the actions of Jezebel's that is interesting. She obviously knew that her son had been overthrown. She knew that Jehu was now on this hot temper to wipe out Ahab's line. But what does she do? She goes to powder her face and to get herself ready. And I don't believe that she's doing this in this thing of like, well, let me be all prim and proper before my demise. I think she's thinking she can win Jehu over. She can seduce him just like she had likely seduced her husband, the king, and probably seduced other people before. And so she goes out now to try to capture basically his heart, and that doesn't work out too well. Not when she gets run over by a chariot. But before she does that, there's an interesting statement that's made here, and it's easy to just pass by it. And she basically says, where Zimri, you're Zimri, like you're coming in his power and his strength. And Zimri killed his foes. Well, Zimri was some 45 years or so before these events, and he came in and was ruthless in overthrowing the previous regime to take the throne for himself. And so she's not saying it in like, oh, you're like Zimri. I think it's like, ooh, you're like Zimri. And so that's more the mindset that it appears that Jezebel has. But she's going to get run down by the chariot. And what does Jehu do? Oh, well, he runs over the queen mother with the chariot and then goes and has lunch. And then at some point, as his meal is finishing, he's like, the queen mother, she actually is the daughter of a king herself and is a queen mother, and we need to treat her with a little respect. So let's bury her, give her a proper burial. And when the men go out to give Jezebel a proper burial, all they can find are her hands and her skull. The dogs have eaten the rest of her or dragged it off. And the scripture gives us the very descriptive picture of that the dogs would spread her over the field of the Jezreel plain. How would the dogs going to... Well, you get the idea. But this fulfills that scripture, but it also makes it in a sense of that Jezebel would never have a place that people could say, that's where Jezebel is buried. Because you know that there are people who would have ended up worshiping Jezebel. People who would have said, oh, she was misunderstood. She was mistreated. Well, she's not going to have that opportunity to have people worship her now. And again, as I say, we do see her name come up in the New Testament scripture to show somebody who was overbearing, overpowerful, and was leading people astray to worship false gods. Well, brothers and sisters, I do hope that you're able to read the remainder of today's passage. I will put in the bucket below all of the other scripture readings for today. If you don't see that right off, check back later. I'm on the road, so I may not be able to put all of those details in right now, but I will get them in at some point later in the day. I hope your weekend's gone well, and until tomorrow, God bless.